Umechoka?
Kuna njia mbili ya kupeleka Kenya, mbele ama nyuma.
Kama mnataka kuumiza wananchi, either usimame na wananchi ama uende usimame na William Ruto.
Ninyi mnataka tuendelee hii barabara ya kwenda kwa mnada ama tuendelee ile ya Kibaki ya kusanya ushuru na Wakenya wenzetu?
We are supporting your initiative to collect taxes.
Kenya ni yetu sote. Tupange vizuri. Tukosoe kwa mpango.
Sema tujenge nyumba, wanasema hatutaki mradi wa Ruto wa kujenga nyumba. Wakisema tunataka universal health care, watu wanasema sasa hiyo ni personal ya Ruto. It is not personal. It is collective.
Lazima tusaidie rais apate pesa. Akuje atumalizie barabara. Aboreshe kilimo. Wale mama wa Kongo wapate pesa zao na Kenya iweze kuendelea.
Hiyo ndio mpango. Tuache siasa kidogo kidogo ya pesa nane.
Kama serikali haitalipisha kodi, je, walimu watapata mishahara namna gani? Wahusika usalama watapata mishahara namna gani? Mimi nitalipwa namna gani?
It is time, leaders, for us to unite, to work together so that we can transform our nation and we can make our nation great.
Nasema njoo sisi tuongee. Na yeye sasa anasema mimi nakubali sasa. Tuende kwa pamoja, tukae pamoja. Bwana, hiyo hatutaki. Hiyo hatutaki bwana.
Kwani alikuwa analalamika ati mambo ya sijui nini? Si niongea na yeye. Mbona hataki mimi niongee na wengine? Kwani Kenya ni yake peke yake?
Wewe simama imara bila ulisema ati mahakama iko independent.
Wacha hiyo mchezo.
Mahakama inatoa uamuzi kulingana na sheria na katiba.
Na unajua hawa watu matapeli wameenda kutafuta viongozi wengine ndio wawe watetezi wao.
Hakuna mazungumzo kati ya fisi na kondoo. Si mnajua hivyo?
So these people, those who are opposed to any conversation amongst Kenyan institutions so that we can sort out the challenges that face development in our country.
Mahakama kuingiliwa na rais, mimi sioni kama kutakuwa na usawa. Kwa sababu atakuwa contradict mambo, wataka majaji wafuate yale maneno anayosema yeye.
Rais wetu wa Kenya awache kujicontradict. Maana mahali amefikia anajicontradict mwenyewe.
Ifurahi kabisa kwamba rais anaingilia idara ya mahakama. Ni aibu katika taifa hili.
Mheshimiwa Rais, hata kama ulipinga katiba ya 2010, ukishaikalia lazima uipatie heshima yake. Si kwamba uliipinga basi unataka kuipinga mpaka mwisho. Na hiyo sheria hiyo ndio imekuweka mamlakani.
Kenya ni yetu sote. Tupange vizuri. Tukosoe kwa mpango. Jameni, tuungane. Tuwache mashindano.
We are ready to go anytime we are called.
Kwenda kwa kitanda na huyu mtu ni usharati.
Wewe ulipatiwa katiba ya nchi. Usiogope kitu chochote, hauhitaji kuzungumza na mtu yoyote.
There are issues that are hurting the executive and the government, and we are also part of that government. So we need to know them so that we deal with them.
Sasa hii mambo unatuambia unataka kwenda kufanya mazungumzo kwa sababu Ruto amekutisha. Hiyo vitu uachana naye. Wewe uko na katiba na chini ya katiba Wakenya walikupea nguvu. You are a president of an arm of government.
We shall deal with the ignorance of the judiciary. I have never failed you and I will not fail you on this one.
Nobody should threaten us. Nobody should blackmail Kenya anymore.
Ruto now wants to intimidate, subdue and capture the judiciary.
This is the year. We are going to sort out corruption in Kenya. It doesn't matter.
Please respect the judiciary. If you don't respect the judiciary, we will not respect whatever you say.
These threats and declarations are extremely serious and a monumental assault to the Constitution.
We must deal with those who want to destroy the credibility of our judicial system by their corrupt acts and corrupt decisions.
The executive will not treat and should not treat the judiciary as a lesser child of the Constitution of Kenya.
Constitution 2010 is a sacred document. And if we act in a manner that demeans the principle of separation of powers, then we're inviting anarchy.
Haki ifanyike kwa Wakenya wa kawaida. Isiwe ni kazi ya kwenda kuhonga judge, kupea wakili pesa.
Ni wakora wachache wamezoea kwa sababu walikuwa naiba pesa ya CDF, ya NHIF. Na kwa sababu tumeweka sheria mpya. Hiyo sheria mpya, huyu Magufuli atawaambia. Hiyo sheria mpya ni ya digital. Kumaanisha hakuna tena mahali mtu anaweza kuiba pesa ya NHIF.
All right, so Songbox there, or the soapbox, just giving you an inkling of how the week has been, especially the heightened debate, the scat battle that has been there of the judiciary and the executive. And moving forward as well, what will be maybe the developments next week as well, with now also some of the senior counsels being banned from appearing before the Supreme Court. We to continue pace with the conversation regarding the admission by the government that G2G deal that Kenya had made with the Gulf has come a cropper as it is. As we can see it today's Business Daily. It's admitting that it can't work anymore. But we're questioning, we can't just let it pass by so easily. People have to be accountable at the end of the day. Remember also yesterday were the questions of Kenha and that particular breach of contract where now they're paying 65 billion shillings regarding that is to an Israeli firm because they've failed to honor the contractual agreement at the end of the day. And we've borrowed 941 million shillings, or we've been loaned by the IMF as it is right now. Are these monies that we get going to pay penalties and legal fees that sometimes we're slapped with because of our sloppiness? That's the question we're asking. And how then do we enter into this contractual agreement at the end of the day that are costly to the country? Should we question maybe our negotiating teams and whom also we're appointing or are in those particular negotiating teams? Right. I think, did I lose my sequence? Yes, Dr. Kalua.
Thank you. The attempt that the government was working to achieve is to reduce the cost of living. The promise was that at the reduction, at the move that we are taking in managing this importation of oil, is going to result to the lower cost of living, so that when the fuel and energy costs are lower, then food will be lower and all that. Good intention. The advice, there must have been, and this is what really brought me to the point that I spoke earlier on. Is there good intention? Does anyone work to fail having been elected to a presidential position and government in power? No one works to that. Is there something wrong? Absolutely. Who is advising the actions that are being taken? Are they doing a good job? Arising from what we are seeing as the result? They're not doing a good job. Let the truth be told. And that is why I say this is an opportunity for the government to be reorganized. This is the opportunity for the president to deal in the way that he should deal. Because what is coming out as a result is a shame. It's painful because he cannot even say it himself. Because he has said this, there are many factors. And as a country, what we are dealing with most of the time is knee-jerk reaction. Instead of going into the root cause of the issues so that we now tackle it in a wholesome approach. There is the US dollar and international economic values that if, for example, our country has a debt of 40 billion Kenya US dollars, any slight adjustment talks of billions and billions, and in some cases, if well calculated, it's trillions. If you put in the manpower and thoughts and everyone who has been part of this. So we need to have everything. Think about the short-term activities. What is it that we need to do in the short term? How can we quickly finance? How can we give subsidies that are going to help the economy to be better? What are the long-term activities that we must be able to deal with and move very fast so that we can be able to think about the agricultural sector, improving our industries, making sure that the investor confidence is available? What are the other activities of rescheduling the debt in a manner that is manageable? Because failure to look at things from that point of view is going to be dealing with things from the top of issues. It's the same reason why you will find parents going to a school to chase the teachers, and the TSC sends away the teachers because there is no immediate solution because of the safety, instead of, which is appreciated anyway, but the deeper reason of engaging the parents. Why is the school not performing? Why are students not getting in there? Are you paying the fees? What is the funding of the institution? What is the role of the parent? What can we be able to do? So we are moving reactionary. But above all this, anything that is leading Kenyans to make decisions that cost our country a lot of money is simply corruption. It must be dealt with in a manner that the president is saying we are going to deal with corruption this year. It is only important that it be dealt in a manner that we can all see that actually corruption is being dealt with. You see, the reason, as I finish, why most of the media houses are straining today and they have big trouble is because the source of information is the leadership that we have. Look at the soapbox. And you can only report what you are being given. You cannot report what is not there. Is this bringing out hope, as I said earlier, to the Kenyans? Absolutely no. But if leaders were bringing out education to the people, that they are presenting their lives in a manner that I would like to be emulated, the media would report that. The corporate institutions will support the media houses through advertisement and every other activity, because Kenyans are going to watch TV and they want to learn more, because what the leaders are giving is extremely important, and therefore the entire crowd and the entire community of the country is going to that direction. We need to rethink as leaders. Every action that we take, every word that we speak, we must understand that there are children watching us and they want to see hope. They want to see a Kenya without you. We cannot blame each other and pinpoint and say you did, I did not do, just for the sake of that specific day, and when you get home you say ilikuwa ni siasa.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, the children are watching us. Let me start there. When the president launched the G2G, he had three things in mind. One, he wanted the dollar to be stemmed from going up to come down to 120 to Kenya shillings, 120 Kenya shillings to a dollar. And he actually had a footnote, perhaps 2015. The second one was also to ensure that there is availability and cheaper fuel. The third was, of course, to bring down the cost of living. The three of them, of course, may have been achieved to a less extent, but of course the dollar is now at 160, and the cost of living is still up. And the fuel prices moved from 150 to now 200 after the recent adjustment of 5 shillings to a litre. Usually in government circles, by the time you append your signature, either as the president, if the president is the one to sign, a lot of protocol would have taken place, including the need for the Office of the Attorney General to go through any documentation to make sure that it is in tandem with the local laws of Kenya, and also it is also in keeping with the international obligations the country has engaged in. As to whether the G2G made that particular requirement is questionable, and that's why many of us have been saying G2G is gangster to gangster. because from the beginning of time, we knew
gangster to gangster,
because not government to government, because we know on the other side, it was not even government, there was an agent which was doing it on behalf of other arrangements, and there was 7 shillings to a liter that was going to be eaten by those around the table. As to who those people are, I don't know, because I was not in that meeting. So these are some of the challenges we go through as a country.
So for every a liter, I actually pay
a liter.
7 shillings.
7 shillings was going to be eaten by somebody somewhere, and that's why Uganda is complaining that you cannot sell us the fuel at higher cost, and yet we know from the source this is supposed to be the prevailing price. And any fuel traveling from Mombasa to Malaba, Uganda border is supposed to be duty-free, because that is not meant for our destination. The other day when the president was talking about some of the fuel that we import goes to Uganda, Rwanda, and other places, it is not true, because the fuel that we need to collect revenue on is the fuel that we use in Kenya. So it's not the fuel that goes through Kenya, because there is government-to-government arrangement between us and our neighbors. And that ban, for example, the people of Busia, those who are close to the border, they cross to Uganda, fuel their vehicles, and come back to do their businesses in Busia town. And it is cheaper that way. The people living across near the Namanga border, they go to Tanzania, fuel, and come back, because it is cheaper to fuel there. So some of the decisions that have been taken have been done with either ignoring the law as advised by the Attorney General, or the Attorney General never gave advice at all, and therefore the Attorney General's office is sleeping on the job. The second issue is that I would want to exonerate Professor Ndungu, is it Njuguna Ndungu? For the time being, because he's been telling us the truth. It is the executive that has not been telling us, part of the executive that has not been telling us the truth. He's been telling us this is the way we are moving, this is the revenue we are collecting, and these are the bottlenecks. We don't expect by making taxes punitive, we are going to achieve much. So my presentation today is that let the government be realistic. Let also the president have the patience and the capacity to listen to others, so that by the time anything is passed, it has taken through all the processes that are required. That's why in every ministry, there is an officer from the office of the Attorney General who is supposed to be advising almost on a daily basis. Anything that you are doing as a minister, you need that advice. And when the advice you feel is not meeting your requirements, you consult with the office of the Attorney General directly, even with the Attorney General himself. That's why the Attorney General is permanently there in the executive for purposes of advising the president and advising various ministries. So if they ignored advice from the office of the Attorney General, or it was done with a view to making making some business among those who are sitting around the table, then that is another mistake. Secondly, some of these convoluted agreements that later on come to bite us because there are certain issues that were ignored, they are done intentionally. They are done because it is a way of making money. In fact, some of these firms that they'll be paid 65 billion Kenya shillings, that money will not all will leave the country. Some of it will just get their way back into the country for purposes of people who are involved with that transaction benefiting. You cannot tell us that all Kenyans are blind. All Kenyans have not gone to school. In fact, we have the best human resource, perhaps in Africa.
Thank you.
In all aspects. And therefore, anything that goes wrong, let's blame it on the chief executive.
All right, so we're talking about the stone and adulterous woman that was brought before Jesus. Are we seeing any clammy hands of corruption, especially with this G2G, in light of revelations that maybe we don't have evidentiary document regarding the 7 shillings that is going to someone's pocket in this regard, or G2G? It was bound to fail because the foundation of it was not honesty to try and proffer, or maybe to pry Kenyans also from the free fall of a shilling as it is. So we could not really actually go with the market correction of the oil prices. When it's going down, we still remain at the contractual agreement with the G2G as it is. So, Barak, as we're winding up on that, we look on another matter. I would love to hear from you.
Okay, fine. Very good. First of all, I've listened very keenly. And as we say again of the alligator when he comes from the sea to report that the sharks are unwell or crocodile is unwell, we must believe him. You see, Honorable Kirwa has operated within the environment of government from some of the innermost sanctums. And therefore, he must understand how government works and functions. And when the sharks are unwell, and he tells us they are unwell, we have cause to believe him by sheer dint of the fact that it's been there. He has seen it. However, we say in Emmanuelia that you cannot separate the rat from the tail and call them two different things. They are one and the same. You cannot separate Professor Ndungu from the executive and say this is the executive and this is Professor Ndungu who should be exonerated. Yeah, it means that he's a misfit, he's a square peg in a round hole. At the time that Professor Ndungu is telling us that this was a wrong deal, and he was the officer who was executing that with these people in the treasury, the whole chain of that which we call the treasury, he should also have been tendering his resignation. We are talking about due process, about creating institutions, about a functional economy, about a functional good governance. And I think that people must be prepared to bite the bullet. If it turns out that they did not make full disclosure to you when you're the cabinet secretary in charge of that ministry, and that now in the fullness of time you are getting to know things that they should have made you to know, again, that is good enough reason for you to step down, because they have demonstrated lack of faith in you. So you cannot separate the rat from the tail and call them two and say that you are going to blame the chief executive. I agree that if it is wrong, blame the chief executive, but blame the entire retinue of people that he works with. Sorry to appear to be addressing directly that contribution from my brother, Mheshimiwa Francis Kirwa. Kipruto Kirwa, but he used to be called Francis some years back. Before.
You see,
but my apologies.
the children are watching.
Apologies.
Christian name.
Kirwa, you see, I don't know whether the Attorney General is necessarily sufficiently vast in these matters of finance and G2G in terms of the equations that must be balanced, dy over dx to the power of this and that this is what we will return. But I want to agree now with Kirwa that heads must roll. As a country, we must get into that space where heads do roll. That the first dialogue that we want to see is dialogue within the establishment that is called the executive, before they can even externalize that dialogue to go out and seek to speak to other entities within the broader rubric of government. What is happening within our own environment? Why do we seem to be getting it wrong all the time? Is it about cronyism? Is it about prebendalism? Is it because we have square pegs in round holes, and can't they be removed? What is this sacrosanct loyalty to one another to the extent that even in the face of obvious failure, people must continue to be tolerated and they must continue to be there? What other special agenda are they detailed to be performing and delivering beyond the known, so that when the known is that they are not functioning, they must still continue to be there? We must be a reformist government.
Indeed. And so the latent concern, I just want us to, unless we have something else to say regarding the judiciary and the treasury, the treasury.
I wanted to touch on something very important that I believe can help our country, because I have the information that may be useful. There is a new way that the world has organized itself. New because it's the last 10 years, where the United Nations has appointed specific institutions, including banks, to be able to finance projects of livelihoods and things that can change the livelihoods of human beings in humanitarian activities. And it is time that Kenya started thinking and working on those ways. The global money transfer for many years has been through wire transfer. There is a new way called PEC that banks can receive money from different institutions of UN category that can be able to support the economies of countries, support livelihoods, humanitarian activities. And it is clear, black and white. That process is fought by, there are only 2 banks in this part of the world that are able to transfer funds, and every other bank works through these 2 banks. These 2 banks would never want to accommodate any other way of transferring money to support humanitarian activities. Kenya and a few countries from Africa have not embraced this system that can change the livelihoods of Kenyans to the point that you cannot believe it, because the money is not alone, it is supposed to support the activities of that specific country. I want to call upon the Central Bank of Kenya, the Treasury, and everybody who is supposed to make this decision to hear out, to understand which is this way. Because we are stuck in only one way, and if we have to change this country, we need to move in the direction that is going to change Kenya. I have that information, I share it here because I know it is beneficial to Kenyans, it is working in other countries, that is very, very helpful. And we need, and when we start getting into squabbles and things that are not right, then you find that we lose the opportunity to think in a new direction that is going to help this country. I rest my case.
Fantastic. We come to you, Martin Law. I just want us to also flag this. I will be remiss if you don't talk about it. I can see also we're pinched for time. Looking at my clock is ticking away from us. If we may look at what we had also this week. There is a new bill that is coming up, State Capture Commission Bill. As you can see it there, State Capture Uhuru Matiang'i to be quizzed. This is what was on the Star on Tuesday. Kenyatta and a host of his senior state officials will be key witnesses. Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah preparing State Capture Commission Bill. Are they making good of their promise that they will revisit? And the people who are enrolled in state capture, some of the faces here, we can see also Chief of Defense is amongst them. That will be one of, they're saying, key witness. So people are questioning how can they, if it's a commission that is supposed to be looking into this matter. I'm trying to do things at the same time here. So we have the faces here. Jubilee top guns likely to face commission. It says former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Also we have former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i. We have also Chief of Defense Forces Francis Ogola, ex-Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibiso, and ex-Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutembai. These are some of the people who will be interrogated. And we're questioning and we're asking, are we still lamenting the past or we should be redeeming the future as indicated? Martin Olo, will this really fly? Do we really need to go in this way? What does it really portend for the unity of this country as it is, given that we've seen this war going on?
You know, Duval, I never stop getting amused at this country and the amount of waste and public space, including the spectrum and broadband that we occupy for fairly unproductive and disheartening engagements. So when you create a bill or a commission on state capture, what is the state? And then you begin to ask, so how do you investigate this state? Who will be investigating this state? And where will you take that report or whatever? So at the end of it, another waste of our good resources, which are now few. We don't have money to play around, to go around the country asking people to tell you things that are neither here nor there. So somebody should try and help me to understand what is meant by state capture. What is it? Because if you want to think that there's a way in which the chief executive or the president captures the state, think no further. Just check the way William is behaving. And you know that he has the state in his hands. What he wants is to bring the judiciary there under control, because already the legislature is under control. Now, you can say, but what's wrong with that in terms of the law, in terms of whatnot? Maybe those are questions. But if politically it works for him to muzzle the legislature, it's okay for politics, but not for the law, not for the constitution, not for separation of powers that is celebrated. But even, you know, when you look at some of these doctrines, you need to look at them and see how far they go. For example, when you go to judiciary, when you say independence of the judiciary, you must also understand that even within the judiciary itself, there's separation of powers, so that when a judge is presiding over a case, even the Chief Justice or nobody else can give him or her instructions. That's the point. So even when Parliament is meeting as Parliament, it is supposed to talk as an institution. And at that point, not even the President is supposed to be directing on what they say. They can even disagree with the President at that point. So back to this state capture thing, I don't think that it is any... And by the way, there is a place where we are going which is not right. One of the reasons why African leaders do not like giving out power is precisely because they fear that should they leave power, they will be followed. Now, somewhere, Uhuru must be sitting and saying, what made me give this man the instruments of power, the sword and so on? I wish I knew. I mean, I'm just thinking. I'm not saying that that's what he's doing. But with this kind of vindictiveness, what will stop the next government from pursuing Ruto and his allies? And then a spiral effect. Assuming Kibaki was pursuing Moi, Uhuru was pursuing Kibaki, where would we be as a country? Once a person has come or a government has come, it has done its thing, it goes off. When these people, at the end of the day, and this is stuff for scholars, when you start talking about state capture, we begin to ask you, what is your conceptualization of the state? Because the state is what is a continuing presence in this country. Governments come and go. The Uhuru government came, it went. The Kibaki government came and went. But the state called Kenya remains. So when you say that the Kenyan state has been captured, what are you going to refer to? What institutions are you going to look at outside the existing ones? Because Uhuru has since left, and today Ruto is both the head of government and head of state.
So maybe we should, it's a moniker borrowed from the Guptas and the South African, of course, case on the state capture as well. We don't know how snugly fitting is for the South African that we borrowed it here. But what does it really portend when we are opening such a Pandora's box, so to speak, and harking back to the history of this? So it won't stop. It will be a domino effect that will be also going backwards. backwards, hacking into history, not just stopping with Uhuru, but of course also President Moi, Kibaki, of course, who's not with us, and going backwards. So do you think this is acting in the wisest of fashion? Should we also be expending a lot of money with another commission that will not come up with or yield any fruit at the end of the day? It will just be people sitting and, you know, at the end of the day, getting a sitting allowance, then nothing comes of it. We have the NDC, and nothing has really come up from the National Dialogue Committee at the end of the day. So where do we stop it? We as the citizens, do we still have the power?
I did CP at primary 7, and a good student of civics will know the difference between a motion, a bill, and a statement in Parliament. And any person who has been in Parliament for slightly more than one term is aware of the procedures that are required in Parliament.
From the standing order? From
the standing orders of the House, and certain rulings that have been done by the Speaker, because they form presidents and they become part of the rules or part of the standing orders. Kimani Ichung'wah is just lying to the public because he knows you just don't bring a bill with the clear witnesses in it. It is supposed to be a motion in Parliament, where if it is a select committee, and that select committee, in its own wisdom and in the process of trying to adduce evidence of what happened, will now go for certain individuals that they feel that information will be useful to the deliberations and conclusions of that particular committee. So for him to come and drop big names is just a way of scaremongering. He's trying to divert possibly the attention from the embarrassment that the president has put them into. The embarrassment in the sense that you cannot just blanketly condemn judiciary, an institution that stands on its own. And so they are trying to divert attention from the fact that some of the promises they made, they are not able to meet. They made the promises, but they are not meeting those promises. They are not telling us how they are going to reduce the cost of feeding our animals, how we are going to double milk production, because that's what they said in their plan. So Kimani Ichung'wah is just playing to the gallery. I don't think such a thing will ever take place. And if it was to take place, they should remember certain principles in history. That some of the people who brought the Section 2A to the Constitution of Kenya, the previous constitution, became the first victims of the same Section 2A, somebody like Charles Njonjo. Some of the people who decided that Kenya was going to be one-party state, and therefore midwife the process of moving some members from Kadu to Kanu in 1964-65, became the first victims. That is Mzee Jaramogi Odinga. He's the one actually who midwives the process of President Moi moving from Kadu to Kanu. And I was told by none other than the late Ochieng Oneko, when he was a member of parliament from Siaya. So all these things, and also remember the guillotine. You know, guillotine was somebody who designed a machine that was supposed to be used to behead individuals who behaved at variance with the thinking of the king. And when he brought the information, the king decided he was going to be the first beneficiary or testing that particular machine. So if Ichung'wah...
I didn't know the guillotine actually was the name of someone.
It's a name of somebody who decided that particular machine, that now we are not beheading people, we are using it to cut paper. But that is the history of this world. So they may be inviting trouble. If there was such a bill to be passed in parliament, it may not be used to deal with the previous administration. The first victim will be this administration or President William Ruto.
Right.
And that's my worry.
Okay. Barack, we'll look at briefly, even as we consider to give our headline thoughts, we shall hear also from Dr. Kalwa briefly.
See, state capture is essentially about manipulation of the institutions, manipulation of the laws, manipulation of the opportunities, manipulation of the order by people in power, bureaucrats, big business concerns for selfish benefits. And I think that to a very great extent that explains why this country is in the dire straits in which it is today. The case for addressing state capture justifies itself. It's a very justified one. It is one which we have grappled with over the decades, and we have accumulated reports in that regard. When we look at the TJRC Commission report, which continues to gather dust in Parliament, it's basically the bottom line about state capture. And so if we were to talk about the need to reopen, I think we need to go back to that TJRC report, and all our efforts should be seen to be incremental, not just going out there to look for another opportunity to do what we have always done. And the timeline is very suspect. We cannot just say these past few years. We must go to the very beginnings. And I do hope that if this motion should find its way on the floor of Parliament, that the essential amendments would be there, so that it is going right to the beginning of the Kenyan nation, and with very clear need to repossess wealth that has been unlawfully gathered. That said and done, the question of the relevance, the wider relevance of yet a new effort, yet a new initiative, is very difficult to see. Yeah, it's almost impossible to see why, beyond maybe saying that you want to do a bit of score settling. But as you do a bit of that score settling, you must remember, as I said earlier on, that the night runners know each other. They know who they have been running with out there. So open that box, knowing very well it could come to you next. When they ask you who the night runner is, and we find that a commission is set and Martin Olo is placed in charge of that commission, and when you go out and you discover that the night runner is your father, will you come to tell us that the night runner has actually been my father?
Thank you. All right, Dr. Kalua.
The Holy Book in the James chapter 4:17 says, whoever knows what is right and does not do that, it is regarded as sin. And I believe all the other faiths have a similar statement. We must, as a nation, understand what is good. As leaders must know what is good. We cannot keep repenting. Yesterday I was in church. We were mourning a very close friend's son, the Mbalu's, Justice Mbalu and the wife. They lost their son, and I was in the Catholic church. And I really pray that God comforts them. What I remember during there is about confession. And I remembered a pastor, a father in our place, Texas, which is Kitui. One young man used to come always to confess. I confess for this. He comes next week, same sin. The third sin, the other week, same sin. He told him, just hold on there for a minute. He went, picked a whip, and got to the other side. He whipped the young man and told him, you cannot be coming here. Now we have to deal with this sin in a different way. And he was whipped and he never came back again. He came to confess other things.
Now he was just sinning quietly.
Yes, maybe. But you know, God is seeing us and may approach us in that way. The same approach, as I finish, was used by the Honorable Nyenze. You remember the late Nyenze.
Yes,
he used to operate matatus. And one time, the conductor was said to be stealing a lot of money. So he approached the matatu and hired a small room, which he paid about 200. Got you know, those back rooms on the road, and told the guy to undress. And he found some money in the underwear, socks, wear. Told him, now we are going to deal, the two of us. He beat up the guy properly and hung the head on the sides, and then told him, now dress. and let's go back to work. This was my money, now let's go back and work. That guy never stole again, he continued to be a very faithful person. That is the same way that God can deal with our leaders. Let us confess for real, unless God hits us in a way that we have never imagined.
Thank you.
The people of Kenya deserve better. They have elected these people to do what is right.
Thank you. My music is up. I'll just give you 10 seconds, each of you, to just give your headline thoughts. Begin with you, Kipruto Kiba. Just a one-liner.
Yeah, Dibal, it is interesting that there is a lot of confession around the table today. And I hope the leaders of this country will also confess and stop lying.
Right, stop lying. We've got news. Let's hear from Dr. Martin.
Well, today was one of those days where wisdom was oozing from the guillotine to the night runners. Essentially, what we have been told today is that we know ourselves. We are Kenyans. Let's not pretend. So let's not think that the problem is with the other guy.
I'm telling you,
the problem
it's been a moment of learning
with us. So it's been a great moment of wisdom.
Indeed.
And the school next to his home, Isongo. Yes. I think
we needed to.
It should be closed permanently.
Yes. Maybe the name is Isongo. What does Isongo mean?
I wonder what it is. But I'm not sure I know.
All right. Your headline thoughts, Isongo. Yeah. Institutions, sacrosanct entities, including the teacher. You cannot just go to a school and frog march a teacher. The teacher must be respected.
Indeed.
That teacher is a parent. And that teacher is a role model. And we must find out what is happening there. There's this very casual way of dealing with things in the country. And I think the lessons are borrowed from the top. They percolate downwards and people start taking the law in their hands. Ili iwe funzo. That school should be closed.
Right, thank you, Barak. Gentlemen, I really appreciate it. I think they're very insightful today. I've learned a lot of things. And of course, what Barak is talking about is all splashed in the Standard today. On the front page of the Standard is attacks, questions as TSC withdraws 17 school teachers. A swift action by teachers' employers ostensibly to signal its zero tolerance for violence by moving 17 tutors from Akaka Mega School, where parents attacked teachers over poor KCSE results, has inadvertently created a new kind of suffering for students caught up in the crossfire. So grab a copy for yourself. You can actually read that story tucked on page 5 of the Standard today. Thank you very much for your valued company. And of course, we want also to give our deepest sympathy and of course our sincere condolences to Honorable Jessica Mbalu, who lost her son in a gory accident. We grieve with the family and of course the rest of the relatives that have been affected by